You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the February 11th meeting of the Michigan City Water Works Board. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Call this meeting of the Water Board to order. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Approval of the minutes from the meeting held on January 28th.
So moved.
Second it.
Motion is second that we approve the minutes from the meeting on January 28th. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Purchase orders.
Before you, there's a list of 9 purchase orders. The first one is to Servicescape. This would be weekly turf maintenance for our tank booster sites in Eastwood property. This is mowing. Currently, our maintenance guys do this throughout the week. And we pay them quite a bit of money because we want them to have technical skills. And sitting around on a lawnmower isn't a technical skill. So we're going to try this, and that'll free up our crews to do more projects within the plant. Because right now it's 2 guys going out, and we've calculated about 10 hours a week. And when I calculated the payroll that we're paying on that, it's quite a bit more than this. So this looks like if this works out the way it should, we're looking at a way to put our better skills, use our skills better, I guess is the right way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this much a week?
No, that's for that's the whole season.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the whole season.
Good.
The second one is to LAI. This is for fluoride feed pump parts for $1,496.44. The next one is to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. This is wetlands mitigation requirements on the US, the US 20 annexation area. We have to buy wetlands credits because of the wetlands we will be disturbing to install this water main. We do not know the exact amount yet. The anticipated amount should be close to $129,200. So this $150,000 is a not to exceed because we are still, we have to wait till the DNR actually sends us an invoice. Mm-hmm. And there may be additional charges that we're not aware of yet. Mm-hmm. So once we have that, then we'll be able to pay them right away, is the plan. Because if we don't pay it immediately, it could delay everything on the backside.
Oh.
Because once they get paid, it's going to be several weeks before they get around to. I think it's a couple weeks before they acknowledge that we paid them, mm-hmm. And it can take a couple of weeks for other things to occur. And the contractor's supposed to be able to start working on April 1st. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to delay this project any further. And that's unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control on the speed at which the DNR moves on this. Mm-hmm. So that's the recommendation from our engineers. Number 4 is to Mercino. This is repair on pumps at distribution center confirming for $629.58. The 5th one is to Schaffner Tire. This is the 4 back tires for Truck 9. Truck 9 is our large tandem axle dump truck. It has a total of 8 tires in the rear. The front 4 are okay, but the back 4 are completely bald, so we need to replace those. And that's for $1,388.96. Number 6 is to Vertical Custom Creation. This is for concrete repairs. This is concrete that we've dug up. Pretty much to date, we still have, this doesn't include the work we're going to have to do over in front of Panera. after that main break. There might be a couple others that just happened that aren't part of this, but this is concrete work we already know we gotta get done. And because you can do concrete work in colder weather, we wanna go ahead and keep moving on this instead of waiting until it gets warmer.
Okay.
And I said it's $24,200. Number 7 is to truck centers. This is a coolant leak on truck 14 for $4,127.96. If you remember at the last meeting, we had the purchase order to run a truck because the other truck had broke down. This is the charges for getting that truck fixed.
Okay.
And that's our smaller dump truck. Number 8 is to Midwest Meter, 1-inch ram horn for inventory for $1,758.30. And then Beecher's shut-off notice work orders for $1,621.07. I did want to bring up on number 7, the coolant leak. That's not just like a radiator leak. This was an issue that involved the oil cooler. So there's a little more to it than just like a radiator leak or something like that. So,
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the list of purchase orders dated 2/11/2025 in the amount of $197,542.31.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second to approve the purchase orders dated February 11th. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Claims.
Motion to approve the list of claims dated February 11, 2025.
I'll second it.
Motion and second that we approve the claims dated February 11th, 2025. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Bad debt list.
We do have some high consumption listed here. What kind of breaks are those guys? Something from?
well, what that is the customer had a high bill. We don't know necessarily why they had a high bill, but they didn't pay us and disappeared. So we have to basically, for bookkeeping purposes, write this off. But of course, if they show up later on wanting water from us, they have to pay these bills.
Excellent.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to accept the bad debt list dated February 11, 2025 for bookkeeping purposes only.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and second that we approve the bad debt list dated February 11th, 2025 for bookkeeping purposes only. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the Triumph Middle subdivision.
Yes. Attached is some information for new subdivision that has come in. They're very interested in developing a piece of land. If you look on the drawings there at the back of the packet you have, there's one that has the green box and shows the streets and lots on it. That's the piece of land that this subdivision would be on. And the other drawing is the proposed water main that would go in for this project. Basically, what we have is a subdivision that's a multi-use subdivision. It has 38 single-family home sites, 14 four-unit condominiums, and 8 16-unit apartment buildings planned for this piece of land. There is a plan, as you can see in the drawing of the subdivision, they do intend that the road could be continued southward. And the next piece of property, after that next piece of property, we have a water main on Springland.
Okay.
And so The
Yeah.
thought on our part is to tie those together and loop that through.
Wow.
So basically what we have in here is we have a 6-inch line for the stretch of road with just single-family homes on the west of the centralized pond. And then we would connect on the 16-inch that's out on Tryon Road. And that would come in with a 12-inch main. Minimum size that would be allowed would be an 8-inch.
Wow.
The request would be for the department to pay for the upsize to a 12-inch. And that would go around the east and south side of the centralized pond. And the reason why that main had, that minimum would have to be 8-inch instead of 6 inches, because with all of the apartments and condominiums attached to it, it's a pretty heavy demand on that main, and so we need to increase the size for that.
I need to get out there and look at it. I need to go out there and look at it.
The property,
Yeah, I haven't been out that way for a long time.
right now, it's just empty farmland.
Oh.
Depending on the time of day, you might see turkeys, you might see deer,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
I've been fortunate that they've stayed on that side of the road and not crossed it while I've driven through there.
Wow. That's gonna be amazing.
Then what this would do, if we increase the size of the main, eventually we would continue the main all the way south to Springland, and this would give us another loop
Yeah.
between Tryon and
Yep.
Springland. Currently, all we have, we currently have Carwick and we have Royal.
Yep.
So this would be in between the two.
That's it.
So that would give us
That'd be
some more
great.
options on flow in the event of a main break or something
That's-
like that.
Gonna be great.
Overall, the project consists, as planned here, of 2,354 feet of 12-inch main, 701 feet of 8-inch main, and 1,275 feet of 6-inch main. Now, I did some investigation on this. Normally, when we quote, we've included materials, engineering, design, and then subtracted a 3-year revenue requirement. Then the department has historically covered the labor costs, and the balance of the revenue requirement comes out of the materials. Since the project would be designed by the firm for the subdivision, there wouldn't be any engineering costs put into this. But since the project doesn't have a specific phasing plan, I recommend that we do not include any revenue reductions. But then if they decide to build this in phases, which is very typical for subdivision, we ended up with that at Woodland Ridge. Then when they build a phase, we would consider doing the revenue adjustment. And the reason for that is if we build the entire subdivision, it could be years before we start getting recovering on that expense that the department would have in that situation. So my thought is that we provide this information now. The developer wasn't sure if he's going to do it in one shot or do it in phasing. This may lead him towards putting into phasing it in instead of doing the whole thing at one time, which would be beneficial on our part too, in our participatory actions. It reduces the size of the project, reduces the amount of money we spend on water main, et cetera, or on labor, I should say. It reduces what he spends at one time also. So, at this point in time, the estimated cost of the entire subdivision for water main, that's labor and materials, is $482,157. The 8-inch estimate, with the water main being an 8-inch instead of a 12-inch, that material was $236,197, and that would be the developer's responsibility. Increasing to a 12-inch, the materials estimate climbs to $279,060, so it's approximately right around a little under $42,000, or right at $42,000, I should say. So the department's portion of the project would include labor and material upsizing costs, which would be $245,960. If we did not upsize, the department's portion would then only be $203,097, and the majority of that is department labor. So we would be, actually all that would be that's just department labor. So, and one of the things to mention in that is, if it's department labor, our people are going to be paid whether they're doing this job or another job. So it gives us a job to attach the pay to, that we can even capitalize the labor and the benefits on, so, which helps our operating expenses down the line. So there are three decisions for the board to make concerning this project. The first, whether the board is interested in servicing this subdivision. The second is whether to approve quoting the amount of $236,197 for the extension. And the third is whether to upsize the main around the east and south side of the centralized pond. My recommendation is to do all three. And like I said, I firmly believe that the developer will end up building this in phases, just like Woodland Ridge did, but there's no guarantee on it, so.
I'm all for it.
Can I make a motion to do all three?
You too?
Yeah, you can just make a motion to follow
Any
recommendations.
questions? How do you feel?
I think it's all right.
Davis? You good?
I'm in favor.
Okay.
Would it be a lot of customers?
Well, I mean,
Finish the whole project.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, 108, and those apartments, those are about $2,400 a month, or a year, I'm sorry, of revenue. And that's if they don't have fire systems. If they have fire systems, it'd be a little bit more. I don't think they would. I think they would be just two-story. And then the rest of them, it'd be the same revenues that we get from our other residential customers. So once it's all built out, it'll be a good number of extra customers, additional revenue for the department.
Okay.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented the request to obtain Maine to serve Tryon Meadow subdivision in Michigan City.
I'll second.
Motion and second, that we approve the extending service to the Tryon Meadow subdivision as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Brian's up.
Very good. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Well, I have some good news to share with everyone.
Yay, we like good news.
We like good news. 2024 was a pretty good year. Economic growth was strong, up about 2.8% during the year here in the U.S. At the same time, inflation was moderating, which allowed the Federal Reserve to start reducing interest rates at the end of last year. They were able to reduce short-term rates about 0.75% during the last 3 months of the year, so that was really good. And as a result, stocks here, particularly in the U.S., reacted very strongly, but it was driven by a pretty narrow group of companies. We've talked in here previously about the Mag 7 stocks, large cap tech names like Apple, like NVIDIA, Microsoft. Those really drove an outsized portion of the return in the portfolios during the last year. The good news is we were starting to see a little bit of action from the rest of the world. We're in the middle of corporate earnings season right now, and things actually have been pretty good. We've seen good sales growth, good earnings growth so far from the fourth quarter from these companies that have reported. So if we turn in your packet to page 3, let's take a look at the growth of your portfolio since 2019. At the end of the year 2019, we finished the year at $14,250,000. At 12/31 of 24, so finishing last year up over $6 million during that time frame, roughly $1 million a year in growth for the portfolio, finishing the year at $20,682,000, and we've continued to see some strength since then. You can see the the numbers as of Friday were just over $21 million.
That's great.
So some outstanding returns from the portfolio. If we turn to page 5 of the packet, we'll look at the account profile, which has your asset allocation. And you may recall that we have a maximum equity allocation by policy of the portfolio of 70%, and so we like to keep it below that. We finished the year about 67% in stock, right around 30% in fixed income or bonds, and about 3.5% in cash equivalents, which is the money market position. This is where it's kind of fun here, because if we think back 6 years to 2019, the bond portfolio was only $4 million. So your bond portfolio during that time grew from $4 million to $6 million. As you know, bonds don't grow significantly, just the interest that we're earning on it. So we were able to rebalance the portfolio and grow that bond portfolio by 50%. The interesting thing about that, when you look at the income attributable to the bond portfolio, $275,000, over the same time period, that's up 70%. So it speaks to the rebalancing efforts, taking profits, regularly out of stocks, building the bond portfolio, and then the fact that we've seen higher rates over the past few years has really grown the income in the portfolio. It's also nice to see the total income of the portfolio, just the cash flow yield, almost $500,000 annually.
Wow.
Turning the page 6, and looking at the fixed income portfolio, the important thing here is our mandate is to make sure that all the bond investments are investment grade or better. And so when you look at the breakdown of your portfolio by quality, you can see that 15% of the portfolio is AAA. Most of that is U.S. government bonds. And then at the very bottom, you can see the light blue sliver is rated NA. What does that mean? Those are our insured certificates of deposit. Okay, so they don't have a rating. So then when you look at the rest of the portfolio, everything else is Baa1, which is investment grade, or better up to AAA. Looking at the bottom of the page, we have continued to expand the average maturity of the bond portfolio. It's now up to about just over 3.5 years. And with these really nice rates that we're seeing, we're going to continue expanding that upwards of about 4 years, and we should be able to do that over the next 12 months. Just take advantage of those higher rates and continue to build the cash flow income of the portfolio. Flipping to page 7, and just looking at the breakdown of bonds by asset class, you can see the majority of the bonds are still focused on high-grade U.S. corporate bonds, about 70% of the portfolio, and the remainder is split between CDs. Again, all those are insured under the $250,000 FDIC limits, and U.S. government notes and bonds at 15% each. Turning the page to page 8, we'll spend just a moment on the individual equity holdings. Again, an important piece of fiduciary work that we do here is to make sure that we're properly diversified in the equity portfolio. So the first thing you see is we don't have any sectors above 25% in the portfolio. We do have a pretty significant weighting in information technology. But again, when you look at a broad measure of stocks like the S&P 500, you would actually see something in excess of 30% in that sector. At Harbor Trust, we set our policy maximums at 25% to make sure that we're getting good diversification, regardless of what may happen in the short run in the equity markets. We've seen this before a time or two throughout history where, back in the dot-com era, so in late 90s, early 2000s, you saw the communications sector at that time grow to over 40% of the S&P 500. Again, we kept those policy measures in place to limit ourselves to no more than 25%. And within a couple of years, you saw really significant valuation issues in that communications sector, and you saw a lot of destruction of capital there, with a lot of stocks that just didn't have the fundamental prowess to persist. Now, we're not really seeing that type of fundamental behavior today, but we do have an elevated tech sector. And so we're just, maintaining that discipline, even though it may cost us a little investment performance in the near term. You'll also see at the far right that the international sector, the blue bar there, compared to the orange bar, which is the benchmark, we've been underweight international, and that's really helped the portfolio. Global international stocks have really not performed anywhere close to as well as U.S. companies. And then let's look at some performance, and we'll conclude our comments for the day. Let's look at page 19. So in the top left, you can see the asset class performance. The line bars there. The dark bar is the pension portfolio. You can see really strong growth since we've managed the portfolio starting in 2019. 1999. That was a long time ago. And pretty exciting. If you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see that the metrics on the chart are 500%. The portfolio is almost up 500% in its inception since 1999. So just really exciting to see those kind of numbers. You can see the fiscal year-to-date numbers, 14.5%, so really strong. Ordinarily, you would expect the portfolio to be somewhere in the 6 to 8% range, on an annual basis. So certainly we saw exceptional numbers for the last 2 years since the extreme inflationary environment that we were in 22 when we last experienced some declines. You can see that we've slightly underperformed the benchmark. We're not going to outperform the benchmark in every year or every period. Again, a lot of that had to do with our policy diversification constraints, giving up a little upside to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the portfolio. But again, 14.5 versus 16.3%, not a significant deviation there from the benchmark. More importantly, when you look at the report period at the far right, and that's since 1999, the inception date, 7.2% for the portfolio versus a benchmark return of 6%. 6% is a really important number because if you're at least achieving the benchmark there, you're meeting the actuarial guidelines to make sure that you're properly funded in the portfolio. So we've been able to exceed those numbers, fortunately. Looking at the last page, page 20, you can see the impact over the last 5 and 10 years, 11.5% average return over 5, almost 10% over the last 10 years. So a decade averaging nearly 10% a year has been really important for the portfolio. So where do we go from here? Obviously, there's a bit going on right now. You've got a new administration that is hit the ground running and making a lot of policy changes. And so that's something we're really keeping a close eye on. The tariffs, the immigration policies can have a big impact on our economy and potentially a negative impact. So, we're keeping a close eye on that to make sure we don't need to make any changes to the portfolio. It's far too early to tell though, and you can kind of see when you look at performance of equities so far this year, they've really taken it in stride because there's not enough information out there yet to warrant making any significant changes. We are expecting economic growth for 2025 to be good, but a little bit slower than last year, probably around 2%. But if some of those tariffs were to become longer term in nature, you could see that drift down towards maybe 1.5%, 1.2%. So that's what we really have to look out for. And so in terms of performance, we've already seen some volatility, even though, stocks are holding up pretty well this year. We've seen volatile both stock and bond markets early this year. We would expect that to continue, particularly in this first 90 days of the new Trump administration, until we kind of settle in and see what changes we'll have to work with. And we would expect more moderate returns, something much closer to the long-term average for your portfolio, somewhere probably in the 6 to 8% range. So, we're hopeful that it can be another good year. There's no reason why it can't, unless some of these policy changes were to slow economic growth. Okay? So any questions on the portfolio as it stands today? I will just mention we just went through another round of rebalancing in the last couple of weeks. And we shifted a couple of percent out of equities and into fixed income, just again to keep building that income-producing machine that is the bond portfolio.
Sounds wonderful.
So these change, right? The different companies?
They do.
I don't see Coca-Cola on there anymore.
It's not. We haven't had Coca-Cola for a long
I see
time.
PepsiCo. I see
We
Pepsico.
have had PepsiCo for a long time, but it's quite interesting as we've seen shifts where technology has become the leader and the clear leader. Whether you're looking at the information technology sector or you're looking at the communications sector that houses a lot of the internet-facing companies like a Google, like Netflix. Those have really taken over a leadership role. And you've seen other sectors like consumer staples where Coke and Pepsi live. You've seen those sectors really shrink. And we were just commenting about this in our investment committee over the past couple of days. The staples sector was normally a 10 to 12% portion of our economy, of our U.S. stock market. It's now down to between 5 and 6%. So it's shrunk by about half. You've seen a similar thing happen in energy. Those are two very important sectors of our economy. And particularly when you talk about staples, the defensive qualities that they have, now you've got a much smaller amount of our economy that's more defensive in nature. And so by that very nature, it's increasing the volatility on a day in and day out basis in our marketplace. So, it's something that we pay a lot of attention to. It's really changed the dynamics of our entire market over the last, say, 5 years or so.
Is Blackstone Energy?
It is not, it is a financial company, but they do have energy funds that they raise money for. So they are what's known as an alternative money manager, okay? So where Harbor Trust manages mainly very liquid investments, U.S. large cap stocks, investment grade bonds. Blackstone manages funds of real estate, of energy, of utilities, and other infrastructure. And so there's been a lot of growth, obviously, in that globally, not just here in the US, but around the world. And so you've seen a phenomenal amount of growth from that company as they've been able to raise money for additional funds. And particularly, they had a lot of cash in 2008, 2009. And then we're able to raise more even from accredited investors, large investors that are able to tolerate a lot more volatility. The same thing happened during COVID in 2020 and 2021. And so when a lot of these investments were very illiquid, like real estate, for instance, they were able to buy property or buy infrastructure pieces at discounted prices for long-term investors. And so the portfolios definitely benefit from owning a stock like that. It's not your everyday company. It's a little bit different, but really fascinating company.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
It's interesting.
Okay, any other questions for Brian?
No, thank you very much.
All right, thanks for
Thank
having me.
you for coming.
Thank you. Yay! It's going up.
Old business.
Okay, under old business, I do need to request that the board would approve the necessary transfers for the final amount that's due to the DNR based on that purchase order we talked about earlier for those US 20 wetlands mitigations and allows to pay once the invoice is received. Right now, we haven't transferred the funds yet because we don't know what the amount's going to be, but we would end up transferring from improvement to the appropriate fund to pay to make the payment.
It's not to exceed 150,000.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to make a motion on what he said, not to exceed 150,000.
I'll second it.
Motion second. We approve the superintendent to pay the DNR up to $150,000 for the wetland mitigation. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. As you saw on the list, I did not have the NDOT rest area. I didn't have any new information yet. I didn't have enough time to get everything worked out. I'm working on a few thoughts concerning financials with regard to that project as well. So, some information I just got actually today. So, I'll provide more information once I have it. At the last meeting, we talked about all the main breaks we had in January, because we were hit pretty hard. Just for the record, we had 20. The normal is between 3 and 5.
Wow.
We had huge, quick temperature changes, and whenever you have that occur, the water changes temperature as well.
Yep.
And when you change temperature of the water with the pipe underground, and there's quick changes, you're gonna find weak spots in your water main.
Wow.
Utilities all over our area, we've had lots of water main breaks because of the big swings that we had this past January.
Wow.
So just so everybody's aware, we had approximately, let's see, in overtime, we had about 732 hours of overtime for our distribution crew.
Wow.
Some of that's most of that's main breaks, some of it is frozen services. A few of those were ours, a few of them were customers. But we still have to go out and check them out. So that's about $30,600 in overtime for the month. So,
For January?
for just for January.
Just for January.
Yeah. So, it was a rough month. The guys worked a lot of hours. They're very tired, but fortunately, and they made it through all of that without any injuries.
That's wonderful.
and, we had a couple of small boil water advisories, but nothing major. We didn't have another catastrophe like we had last winter, where we turned into a whole big ordeal, so it was very fortunate. Probably the most complex main break we had to deal with actually was over in front of Panera Bread, and that's because of so many other utilities in the ground, and a section of pipe broke. But the fortunate thing is that the way that mains have been installed over the years, the only customer impacted was Panera. They were the only ones impacted. Unfortunately for Panera,
Yeah.
but yeah, they were the only ones impacted, so that was very fortunate there. Yeah, we had to replace about a 14-foot section of water main. So it blew apart. And that main was just about 50 years old, so it wasn't very old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's all I had under old business.
New business.
Under new business, I just wanted to let the board be aware. Our good friends at NIPSCO have a rate case before the IURC for their electric. You may have seen this in the newspaper. There are reports that it's a 22% increase. I did see in some testimony a 16.75% increase. So I'm not sure what the final results are going to be. They did have special treatment for large customers. We're not considered a large customer, even though the amount of energy we use is quite a bit. But we're nothing compared to somebody like a U.S. Steel. So one of the things I put together, if you want to take these and pass them down.
I got it.
Thank you.
I just, so the mayor's office contacted me because the city, I guess, is planning to, they're looking at possibly doing a resolution concerning this increase that NIPSCO is working on. If basically the overall department's electric bill could increase between $62,000 and $82,000 for the year. So that's basically an employee. It's a salary and benefits. This particular list just shows how it's changed since 2020, and this is just at our treatment plant because this was easy information for me to gather for the treatment plant. In the year 2020, the price per kilowatt hour was 0.093 cents. The dollars per million gallons was $114.77. In 2024, that had risen to 0.135 dollars per kilowatt hour, which is $156.42 per million gallons. That was about 25% increase from the year 2020 through the year 2024. 2025A is the 22% increase. 2025B is the 16.75 increase. If they get the 22% that's been reported, our price per kilowatt hour is $0.165, which would then equate to $190.83 per million gallons of water we pump out of the plant, which would then turn into an increase over the year 2020 of 38.9%. That their rates have increased 38.9% since 2020. In 2025B, so that's 16.75, the price per kilowatt hour would be $0.158 per kilowatt hour, or $182.62 per million gallons, which would be a 36.2% increase since 2020. So yeah, these are pretty significant increases that NIPSCO is requesting. And so I know there's a lot of things going on with regard to that. Generally speaking, as a utility directly, we try not to intervene because we are also a regulated utility. And when the time comes, we would rather that they weren't an intervener in our rate case, because it'll be I'm sure things would be reciprocated if we filed as an intervener. So I don't know what the city's efforts will result in, but I know that they're making a point, and that information will get down to the Regulatory Commission for what it's worth. That being said, this is something that I'm going to have to monitor closely just to see what happens. And obviously, we'll have to consider how we can better operate to try and mitigate this increase as much as possible. So we'll be looking at our options regarding that, things we might be able to decrease our energy costs with regard to that. It's tricky because we have to put the water out there and we have to maintain a certain amount of pressure.
Yep.
You know, it's not like in some other countries where you can just shut the water off because you don't want to pay that bill. So that's one of the things we have here in the U.S. is we make sure that the water's running 24/7. So we will figure out ways to mitigate this expense, but I want to make the board aware of it and also make the board aware of the communication from the mayor's office. And what I did provide to her was the estimated increase of $62,000 to $82,000 per year on our water bill, on our electric bill, I should say.
What building is this at?
This particular spreadsheet is based off of just our treatment plant. So this is just the cost of pumping water, treating the water and pumping the water out the door.
Got it.
We have the total amount of bills at the other facilities, but the other facilities, we don't calculate that kind of information. We just calculate that kind of information at the plant.
Gotcha. Thank you. Wow.
So dollar-wise, did you put a figure on it?
A dollar figure for, I mean, as far as what the increase is going to,
Yeah, how much is gonna total?
if they get 16.75, it would increase all of our electric bills throughout by 62,000 approximately.
Yeah, okay.
And if they get the 22%, it'll be 82,000 increase over our current, what we currently are billed
Per year?
per year. It's a pretty hefty increase. And we pay a lot of electric bill. I mean, we're up in the upper 300,000, probably close to 400,000 a year range. So, but water isn't cheap to move. This is the cheapest way to move. I should say that.
Yeah.
It'd be very expensive to truck.
Okay. Any other new business?
I did want to bring to the board's attention that, to see if there's any interest, and you can let me know outside of this meeting, but there's upcoming chamber luncheon March 4th at the Blue Chip from 11:30 to 1. And then there's also the Chamber of Commerce Awards Dinner March 14th from 5 to 9 at the Blue Chip. So if anybody's interested in attending, I'm gonna plan on attending. Yeah, so.
What date was that again?
The chamber luncheon is the 4th of March. And the speaker at that will be actually Mayor Angie Deutsch, Nelson Deutsch. And then the Chamber Awards Dinner is on the 14th from 5 to 9. At the Blue Chip. And then I also wanted to bring up, because I'll be attending it, and if you desire to attend as well, this Thursday at 5:30 at City Hall. The mayor's hosting town hall meetings. At this particular town hall, I'll be present as a representative for the department, but we won't have a table at this particular one. There'll be future ones where we actually are set up to present, provide specific information to folks, but just wanted to let you guys know about it.
That's this Thursday at 5:30.
At 5:30 at City Hall.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Any public comment? Public, director's comments? Someone like to move to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion second, we adjourn.
Okay.